Hello, everybody. It's Tara Boothby with Conversations for Restoration, and we are here with one of my new Australian friends. This is Billy Wolstenholme, which is Billy said that's God's joke is his last name, which is a fun way of playing around with one of those mouthfuls like mine. I got one too, Tara Boothby.
Mm.
Um, so Billy, how do you I guess how would you go about introducing yourself?
Um, I'm just a boy from Blacktown who God has just touched his life in the most amazing ways, um, and and just wants other people to experience the same thing. I think, I often say to people, if we used to have these things at school where you would pick sides, like if you're a basketballer, you pick one, I pick one, you pick one, and we then split the teams up. And if God was doing that, if I was God, I wouldn't pick me on his team, but I'm so glad that he did, if that
Oh,
makes sense.
I think that's just
So,
an honest way of feeling, like why me? Why am I so included?
yeah, and and I'm smart enough to know I'm not going to get a better offer, so I'm all in, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So Billy, like you've had a few years, hey, you have a few years
Yep,
on you. And
yep,
I guess like one of the things that you and I have recently spoken about was mental health
yeah.
mental health and spiritual healing, I guess was one of the things. So maybe
Mm,
why don't we start at the tail end and then we can get back to some of the earlier
sure,
parts of your story as well. Now
sure.
you have participated in EMDR, which is eye
Yeah.
movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. So can you tell people a little bit about what that means?
I don't have all the technical understanding of it, but what it has meant for me, and my wife first did it. So, um, what it the outworking of it. So the story behind it is now, for the first time in my life, and I'm 57, I'm living without shame. Like
Wow.
I'm living without shame. And when you understand the other back parts of my story, particularly as we've spoken about inside religious organisations, the two things that they don't do terribly well, amongst other things, um, is the whole stuff around. So the moral, we call it moral failings. Anything that's got anything to do with, we sanitize language, but anything to do with sexual sin or sexual, stuff that isn't okay, and the mental health space. Those two things are just really kind of, there's just some real taboos, and we don't deal with that stuff well. And so, for the first time in my life, as a young boy, um, as a young man, addicted to pornography, and then trying to live a Christian life, this kind of cycle of addiction and craziness of, on one hand, protesting for the rights of people and women's rights and all those sorts of things, and then living this secret life, and the shame, the absolute shame that goes with that, and the inability to work it out. For the first time in my life, I had someone sit me down and work through some stuff, and the whole EMDR thing means, and my wife's experience was similar, and
Mhm.
I have permission to share her stuff as well. So,
Amazing.
um, my wife was the victim of three sexual assaults, the worst that a woman could ever have to put up with, and her EMDR, she said she found the same thing. She now lives without shame, but she also has, as do I, like she has a the outcome of that was that she had a habit, a self-harming habit, not bad self-harming, but a self-harming habit that stopped overnight after 42 years
Wow.
as a result of EMDR. My
Wow.
shame it's just gone. Like I don't, and now I could never understand why I used to try and live in the moment. Paul Young talks about not future tripping and not, I was so hyper vigilant, all because the trauma that was created in my youth and in my 0 to 7 years, which I couldn't even understand. EMDR just dealt with that and pieced it together and helped me understand it. And I, for the first time in my life, I live without shame. Like I'm not. I've been divorced. I've done all sorts of stuff. I've ridden with bike clubs. I'm I've had a really, really amazing life with lots of experiences. If you could, and I know I said to the therapist, if there's one thing I could get rid of, if I could rub out one area of my life,
Yeah.
it would be that addiction and to that kind of thing, because it's such a stain because of the way the church views all that sort of stuff. I think in the similar sort of sense with the mental health spaces, we're happy for people to take medication for diabetes and high blood pressure and all those sorts of things. But the minute you talk about depression or schizophrenia or, well, haven't you prayed enough? God can heal you, like it's all those kinds of things. Um, so for the first time in my life, sound like a broken record, to be without shame and to be, and that then opened up the door to live in the present because the present wasn't
Yeah.
dangerous
Yeah.
for
And I
the
like
first
what
time in
you
my life.
say. Thank you. I like what you say about mental health there, and that we'll take pills
Mm,
for some things, but
yeah.
then to say, go ask for help because
Mm,
you're carrying a heavy load. Go
yeah.
ask for help because you're very low, or because
Mm,
you like with a sexual assault,
mm,
you're feeling responsible for somebody misusing you, or
mm,
feeling
mm,
confused for
mm.
misusing ourselves. Pornography is
Yeah.
another great
Yep.
example
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
being oppressed by Puritan culture in both of those examples.
Mm, mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because nobody who talks enough about pornography in a church setting.
No, no. And what we I don't know whether misdiagnosed is the right word or whatever it is, but the reality is, and I had some friends who are filmmakers, they made up a small documentary about my life. And one of the things I discovered through that is that God was nowhere near as disgusted with me as I was with me, because
Yeah,
he knows, like it was a search for intimacy. Like it was a search for, but it was a search in the wrong place. And I was incapable, not unwilling, but incapable of paying the price that was needed, which is vulnerability, because I had learnt culturally and through my upbringing that vulnerability was just an unsafe space. And
yes.
so you're trying to get what you need without the tools that you need to get it. And the therapist, she was just such a wonderful, wonderful lady. She's like, "Are you kidding? Of course I have." And I'm like, "I don't know, how did I end up here?" And she goes, "Are you kidding? It's like I could have predicted that when you were two. Like this is where you're going to end up
Yeah.
because." And then they rattle off this and this and this and this, and you go, "Oh, oh." So where I am is kind of a normal result of the trauma you've been through and what that leads to if you don't deal with it. And if
Yeah.
you don't deal with it, which is in the mental health space, then you become trapped in this cycle of stuff that you just don't know how to get out of.
I
And
think
I
that's,
don't think
yeah,
that
go ahead.
go, no, go,
Oh, I
no,
was just
go.
going to say, you're making me excited and I want to share too. My
Cool,
question for
cool.
you, my question
Yeah,
is like, because it's so taboo, right? There's
yeah.
this, and you bring up William Paul Young, and Paul's an advocate for counseling, and he did counseling. But there's
Oh, yeah.
also, sometimes we think like with shame, if I can't figure it out through my spiritual identity, then, I'm helpless. So I wonder what sense you've made of it, Billy, that there's this spiritual healing that you've obviously uh, had and are benefited from, and then there's also this mental health sort of science realm of healing that you've benefited
Yeah.
from. How do you make sense of that, or how do you explain that to people?
Um, I think for me, I think EMDR has been the culmination of a whole range of things. Like I think uh, I, I kind of wish I'd discovered it a long time ago, but then I also think I have a friend of mine who's a really nice bloke, and I did what we all do in the church, which is when it doesn't work, you just work harder, you just perform more, you just jump through more hoops. So it was counselling and courses and courses and more courses, and then counselling, and then prophetic ministry, and then it was go up and get more prayer healing. none of which I want to dismiss or anything, because I kind of feel like they're the dots, and then EMDR just drew a circle and
Mm,
completed the whole line around the stuff. So everything, I think EMDR, the timing of that for me was just perfect. And the way in which it works just really um, landed in the right spot. So all the cognitive stuff, which I kind of feel like, we've banded around stuff, but the cognitive stuff gives you the framework once the healing takes place to then go, oh, that's why that happened. Oh, and that's what, and so you can pin it together like a jigsaw puzzle.
mm,
I used to referee at a pretty elite level at soccer, and I think God, we have a thing called the advantage rule, where if we're playing a game and I foul you, the referee can go, right, that's a free kick, you get a free kick, or he can go, no, 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 there's an advantage to be gained for your team here. You're not going to get a free kick, but your team is going to benefit overall.
mm,
So he calls advantage. And I think God is just the absolute most remarkable worker of the advantage rule. Whatever happens that is due to, and we sometimes get, I want a free kick, I want a free kick, I want justice, I want this, where God's going, no, no,
yeah.
get up, keep going. There's a better thing and an outcome here for you and your team. And so I feel like the cognitive stuff put all that stuff in place, and then EMDR came along and went, join the dot, join the dot, join the dot, join the dot, and then the picture becomes one of wholeness rather. And God, at the risk of, upsetting those who might be theologically far more astute than I am, God doesn't want us healed. He actually wants us whole. And there's a big
Yes.
difference. You know, I think,
I agree. I agree.
yeah,
I love, I want to say too, what a metaphor that the soccer getting the free kick or the advantage.
yeah,
What a metaphor.
yeah. And God speaks our language.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I'm also, my background is I'm a qualified plumber and a qualified chef, which is a bizarre mix. But you'll be the same with yeah, right, both ends of the food chain covered. Um, like God speaks our language, and the stuff in dreams. So you'll get pictures and things that happen, and Deb Grant, as you know, Deb, I'm good friends with Deb and Gary. Gary and I are good
Glorious. Yeah.
mates. Yeah, man, yeah. And she says, we in throughout our life we have thousands of therapists. This little bit here and that little bit there and this little bit. Like this for me is a therapy session because it's relational. Like it's not meant to
Mhm.
be therapeutic, but it
Me
is
too.
therapeutic by default. Right?
Me
Did I?
too.
Thank you. Um, because and I think that for me it would be short selling EMDR to say it's just the icing on the cake, because it's far more than that. Because it actually made sense. I feel like the cognitive stuff is you know the systematic theology, and EMDR is narrative. Like that puts the flesh and the storytelling
Mm,
behind it. And they both, it's not one or the other, they both go together. When you understand the systematic, it makes the narrative jump out at you and become more alive. And so EMDR did that for me. It's just nice to know that you're not abnormal, whatever normal happens to be.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
love Gabor Mate's book. I
Mm.
haven't read the whole thing, but little snippets of, the myth of normal. You Canadians have produced some pretty good people, I tell you, man. Like,
We
you
do
know,
have some gooders. Yeah.
you have some good people up there. And his stuff around trauma and healing. And I remember him talking about throwing a tantrum as a 79-year-old man at the airport because his wife was late picking him up, and traced that back to some childhood trauma stuff, and
Hmm.
thinking, yeah, it's kind of conflicting, because you go, oh man, that's great. At 79, he's he's still having issues, like he's still struggling with stuff. I'm not abnormal. But then you go, oh man, I'm going to be doing this till I'm 79, like it's that kind of,
It's the
you
well,
know,
it's normal. It normalizes, and then it also, it's like you said, we're not, the goal isn't to be completely healed. It's
no.
just to be whole, and we are
Mm,
messy broken, fallible people,
Yeah.
and we're still included.
Mm,
And
mm,
what I like that you're saying here too, Billy, there's so many amazing things. So sometimes taking a risk to trust the healers around us, like a
yeah.
psychologist or a doctor, a psychiatrist, a chiropractor. Like there's a
Yeah.
place to see, like, how can this give me further wholeness? How can this help me integrate my inner working model even more?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we just hang in the space of, you know, being prayed over or pray away or all those
Yeah.
things, there's a risk there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things your lovely friend Mel met Mel at Tacos, it was great value.
Yeah.
She introduced me to a term that I had not heard called spiritual bypassing. Right? I'm like, what's spiritual bypassing? And then when she explained it, I'm like, wow. Because my wife, um, we lost our daughter, my stepdaughter, her daughter, 3 months into our marriage. And she hates it. Christians in particular, those who profess to have a religious kind of outlook on life, will often feel the need to fill empty spaces with useless words. Oh,
Mm,
God must have wanted her, and I think that the problem with the prayer life model, this and that, and the thing that my counsellor is saying, is that you one of the things that's problematic inside religious structures and systems is that you don't deal with the trauma, but because you've had prayer, you think you have. I prayed about it. I should be all right. I'm going
mm,
to name it and claim it, but I haven't actually dealt with what's going on inside my body. So therefore, you think you're okay, but the behavior never changes. And
yeah.
that's pornography all over. You think, right, yep, I'm
Yeah.
gonna do better. Yeah, I've had a good meeting with a friend. I'm like Paul. I don't have any secrets. Like it's out there. It's just the better way to live. But it didn't change a great deal until I really began to understand that there is trauma here, there's reasons for it, I need to deal with it. And to deal with it means that it needs to be reprocessed. I'm like, how do you reprocess stuff?
Totally.
And and then the EMDR stuff. Um,
Well, and it's interesting because just to think about addiction, right? So from an attachment perspective, and there's good research that
mm,
associates loneliness and
mm,
isolation with compulsive behaviors. And now there's
yeah,
all sorts of things that we could abuse, like pornography, alcohol, drugs, all sorts of things
yeah,
that aren't necessarily always what we'd say is an addiction, but that
mm,
the nature of addiction is such that, you would go off and rally and advocate for women's rights. And so you
yeah,
do a wonderful thing, but then a trigger happens, an event, a thought, a feeling shows up, and it gets a person into their rituals, the lead up. And then whatever the negative behavior or use, the thing that we do is happens, there's always
mm,
these consequences. So the negative view of self, my self-loathing or my self-condemnation, my feeling rejected, whatever it is, that slippery slope of thinking that
mm,
reinforces next time. Rather than, so prayer is wonderful, but that's where we
yeah,
can feel abused by prayer because I
yeah,
don't understand what's going on inside of me, that I keep doing
yeah,
the thing I hate to do.
yeah, yeah,
And some
yeah,
people do get a miraculous, just like a healing
yeah,
moment, and other
yeah,
people don't. Lots of people don't.
yeah. And I think and that my experiences, and I've had some of the most wonderful, wonderful, wonderful prayer experiences where people
Mhm.
have, read my mail and done stuff, and like, it is just incredible. Like that stuff has its place, but so if you, it's not a one size fits all model. Nothing is a one
No,
size fits all. But I think particularly in our religious structures, I won't call it church because we know that you and I are the church. Like it's in those religious structures the business of getting on with things is important. So, okay, this is a little hiccup. Let's deal with this, right? You've been prayed for. Let's get on with it, and away you go. And that spiritual bypassing happens, and then you don't
yeah,
truly get healed. And I think that's just it's a real downfall because my maybe segue into here, but I was born. My first bout of life-saving surgery happened at 22 days old. So I
Wow.
was born with a tumor in my stomach. I lost 60% of my body weight. Was back in hospital, um, and they operated on me. And most young boys in the late 60s, when this happens, late 60s, early 70s, didn't make it through the operation. Um, and so I made it through the operation, and I had an amazing prayer experience at 48, which was a vision that highlighted all that stuff. And so um, at 48, God showed me what had happened and how he'd held me through the operation. And all of a sudden, a scar that I had in my stomach, which was just the source of teasing as a child, the scar became a trophy because it's a reminder of what he did.
Oh,
So, so that's like the prayer stuff really happens. But I went into hospital as a 22-day-old baby, was in hospital for another 6 weeks, came home. I don't remember this, obviously, but mum would tell me the story. Um, to a mother who was pregnant. And so at 11 months old, I had a baby brother. So there's all this stuff going on, which I had absolutely no idea about.
yeah.
And and the therapist going, well, there's no attachment, there's no this, there's no that, there's no this. And then there was another story that my mum told about, and again, your adult brain rationalizes it, but your infant, um, where, and I could not tell the story without laughing, and everybody I tell the story to would just be just mortified, like, what? And my mum, in a fit of frustration as a 3-week-old baby, she threw me across the room. Right now, I hadn't, she would feed me, and I would throw up and be hungry, and she would feed me, and I would throw up, and I would be hungry because the tumor I had wouldn't allow food
Yeah.
to digest, which is hence the weight loss. So I'm, as an adult, going, yeah, that makes sense. I've seen kids crying and screaming and frustrated, and you know, and hurt. I shouldn't laugh, because but she said, at least I had the sense to throw you onto something soft like a bed. And I went, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, cool. And yet then went through EMDR, we processed that sort of stuff, and then a therapist was able to piece the things together for me, and then take me through that, and then reprocess it. Why did you not attach? Why is attachment so
Yeah.
important? Why is love? Why? And so I then began to realize that I'd spent my entire life trying not to be in the present, because as a 0 to 7-year-old, being in the present was too dangerous. Like, I
Isn't
couldn't
that
be present.
amazing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And I'm
And I
like,
think, or just to,
no,
okay.
go.
What I want to notice is too, like, especially right now, I feel so passionate and encouraged by the large conversation about institutional trauma. But the
Yeah,
other really important thing that you're highlighting is it's like, guys, we can't just talk about institutional trauma. We have to talk about
mm,
like family of origin pain
yeah,
and all of
yeah,
the stuff because all of those are the dots. All of those are the
yeah.
dots that go inside of the circle of our whole self
That's your
healing.
framework.
Mm-hmm.
That's your framework.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're a unique person, and this story of, it was unsafe 0 to 7 impacts all of your existence in the church and in the therapy room and in the plumbing office and in the kitchen
yeah,
and
yeah,
mhm,
yeah. And in the midst of that, there are these really wonderful experiences that you then, as an adult, come back to and think, well, it wasn't that bad an upbringing. I didn't have, and you're trying to make sense of it all, but you're making sense of it all with your rational adult brain. And I just didn't realize I'm not like, I'm not. The other thing for me is, when we talk about scarcity, is I couldn't read and write till I was 13. The fact that I'm now teaching at a TAFE, as a dyslexic teacher, is just like, I just love God's sense of humor. Who 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 gives a kid the name Wolstenholme and then makes him grow up in a street called Athabasca Avenue, right? Like you know. And so he just takes the things that shouldn't work, and he when there's his redeeming features and stuff in stuff, Like it doesn't just work, it makes beautiful music. Like who would put a porn addict and a rape victim
Yeah,
together in a marriage, right? You'd be insane. But when
yeah,
those people have done the work that they need to do, which is maybe the one upside of continually striving, you just want to be better, you want to do the right
yeah.
thing, maybe for the wrong motives. But when two people do that, that is the outcome of that is this is what's possible when the redeeming love of Jesus is actually realized through the way it's meant to rather than the performance orientation that we do.
Exactly. And I want, so you said two really important things. So the performance driven, because some of the lies that we've believed about God is
Mm,
that we have to work. But
mm,
when you say the work, that's a term that we often use in like mental health
yeah.
realm,
Mm,
psychology, because it's like just sit when I sit in the office with people, like this is where my people sit is on this couch here.
yeah.
And
Mm,
it's like the work is just like we might not be talking about huge things. We might be talking about huge things. We're in this trench. We get in our the
mm,
trenches of our inner working model,
mm,
and it's heavy lifting, but it's not a performative thing, which is interesting. It's hard to like articulate the difference.
yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
fake your way through that inner healing.
Yeah. Which is why I think we're and this is the stuff I love about the whole Jesus model, I'm really apprehensive because the function of words is so you say something and it creates a picture in people's minds. Oh, you're a Christian. All right, well, then you're this, or you're this, you're that. Like, well, I'm a spiritual follower of Jesus. I don't know what that means for you, but I love what he does because it's about your heart. So I can be sitting here like this, and you don't know if I'm reflecting or I'm procrastinating because they're about heart issues and what's going on in the inside.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, are you I'm doing the work. Am I working to strive or am I working to understand and unpack and my heart journey? Because if I'm doing that work, that's the very thing that Jesus calls us to do. What's going on in your heart?
Yeah.
What's the motive that you've got in your heart? And if the motive is to be more Christ-like, if the motive is to be, Gary keeps talking about soteria, the journey of salvation is the one to not overcome sin, and even we can go down that path, but sin in that sense being hamartia, missing the mark. What's the mark? The mark is
Yeah.
love. And if you miss the mark, you're not loving others or you're loving yourself. And so it no longer becomes a performance thing. It becomes, I am working on the very things that are the journey to salvation, which is me then becoming or having a better understanding
Yeah.
of the image and living inside the image that I was first created to be in the first place.
It's amazing too. Okay, I love the phrase missing the mark. I don't
Yeah.
if I have heard somebody say what you just said, it never the lights didn't go on until just right now. That missing the mark is missing love.
Yeah. Yeah.
I that's like such an amazing complete view of well why moral reasoning is so helpful to just live in our fullness of our identity. Like
Yeah.
trying not to miss the mark is just good psychology. It's helpful.
Yeah. 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 I remember again, this is where I sort of go back, like, a boy from Blacktown who couldn't read and write till he's 13. God has surrounded me with people who uh, my scarcity was I'm a bit like Baxter in the sense that born trash, always trash, going to die trash. The other thing that EMDR has taught me and really healed me up of is that I'm just not stupid. And so there are a lot of
Yeah.
other people who have been around who have they look at you, I'll say stuff and I just feel like God's talking through me, which is really great in one sense. But they're like, wow, that's really profound. I'm like, what? I just, what? I'm a stupid kid. That was my take.
Yeah.
My scarcity is can't read, can't write, can't spell, dyslexia. You're stupid. And so there are a number of things that happen in relation to that. And so when I heard the concept of of hamatia, you're missing the mark. You're missing the mark. Um, Began to question, well, what was the mark? What was Jesus' ministry? What was the mark of Jesus' ministry? Well, the mark of Jesus' ministry was to love people wherever they were. So if you're missing the mark, you're not hitting love every time. And the other thing, which is crazy, I'm reading a couple of good books at the moment. Now I read prolifically. I just love stuff. And Dave Tenson's been great with that too. But in Aramaic, the word sin means wrong identity.
Mm,
Means wrong identity. You get that right? Wrong. I'm malfunctioning mentally and living in the wrong identity, and I'm missing the mark. Like this is the stuff that when we start to dig, it's a bit like I'm not a big fan of the deconstruction reconstruction just because it's a linguistic thing, but I understand it. I like renovate. I like the term renovate because you don't just
renovate.
bulldoze everything down and start again. You do deconstruct. You carefully pull it apart and you put better stuff in there. You don't bulldoze the whole house down to build a new kitchen or a new bathroom. Um, but it's like when you start to pull at some of these little things, it's like the hem of a garment. The whole thing collapses
Oh
and then
yeah.
you left to rebuild. And I like those analogies because they make a lot of sense. And my experience has been through that that what God has done is surrounded me with great people who have given me pictures to help me understand the systematic that then makes the narrative come alive. So, Dave Tenson, I remember
Yes.
in the West, he's such a great guy. He's such
He
a great guy.
he's so giving. He's
Oh,
such a good friend on the trail. And
oh,
I mean, the Australians that I've been becoming friends with because of David Tenson. I just
mm,
love your cohort, like Gary Grant,
mm,
Debbie Grant, you, Billy,
mm,
and David. And
mm,
now David has this new book coming out with his wife. And I'm
mm.
like, could you guys get any cool in Australia? Like you guys are the
Right, right, right.
coolest, the
Yeah,
coolest.
thank you. I mean, I remember early on, he talked about the concept of, and in Jewish culture, and I love when you understand the nuances of what happens, and then it confirms where you're at. It's like, you know, um, their eyes are open, and then normally we understand, and then it goes like it's when Jesus talks about, and then their eyes are open, they understood, or whatever, where it happens, Um, for us, perfection, if I draw a circle, um, and the perimeter is equidistant from the middle point in all of that, that's perfection. But inside Jewish culture, perfection is where you keep drawing the circle. You keep going round and round and round and round and round. And perfection is the process. So you
Mm,
keep going, and the process, when you stop, that's when you're sinning. Like that's when you're not walking towards the light. So sin becomes this thing where it's not right and wrong.
yeah.
It's I've stopped moving towards the light. I've stopped the process, and away you go. And and those different understandings, which then institutions hate because they can no longer control the narrative and they can no longer control you, which is the only control we should ever seek is that which we have over ourselves. Um, you know, Dave, he was instrumental in teaching me those things, and then that linked with this, and this linked with that, and he's just an amazingly compassionate man. There was some stuff that was going on in my life, and I was talking to, and he's weeping. I'm like, "What's wrong with you, dude?" But he just feel like this is how detached I am, or was. I'm like, dude, it's just a story. What's wrong with you? But he feels at such an empathetic level, and
Yeah.
his response is the right response that I should be having, but I'm incapable of having.
Yeah.
And then when you understand those things, it just he's such a gifted man in terms of connecting with people and relationship.
And just holding space. I mean, I think too,
Yeah.
like Billy, you're an example of, David is an advocate for eldering and mentoring and just
Mm,
holding space. So he held space with you in a
mm,
sort of probably pastoral and counselorish way
mm,
because that's how David is. And
mm,
whatever that holding was, that was not just like say this perfect prayer and
Mm.
be delivered. There's some
Yeah,
gross
yeah.
language. He
Oh,
did a
yeah.
different thing, and then that kept your ability to keep moving going. And keeping
Mm,
moving is good theology and good
mm.
psychology. And it's we're, we're not finished yet. We don't arrive
No,
here. We don't get the
no.
magical checklist and check all the boxes and there, find some magical pearly gates eventually.
Yeah, 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 yeah. There's another guy that I really like in terms of unpacking some of those cultural nuances and the destination stuff, which he shoots down really well. The bloke by the name is Shane Willard, and do you know Shane, or have you heard of him? Or
You've talked to me about him before.
oh, okay, but he talks about oh yeah, there's my ADHD kicking in. I'm like I'm shiny thing. Um, he talks about the cultural relevance of some of this stuff and the stuff that Dave talks about. And the reality is, that's where I was going. I'm not getting ready to go to heaven, right? My whole journey should be about, and his question is not, is there a heaven or a hell, or is there a heaven? Like, what are you doing? Are you waiting to die to go to heaven, or are you doing everything you possibly can to bring heaven to earth? Because that's what
Yes.
Jesus did, right? And the question is, when you die and you do get to what heaven looks like, are you going to like it? Because if you're not spending this life preparing yourself for whatever the next one looks like, like when you get to heaven, are you going to like what you get when you get there? And he tells the story um, of his grandfather. And I don't want to tell too much because it's his story to tell, but it's just a remarkable thing that illustrates perfectly what our journey should be like. He's like his grandfather was a moonshining. Like they grew up in the South, in South Carolina. Made moonshine, was on the board of the church, was a card carrying member of the Ku Klux Klan, on the church diaconate and board, and died in the middle of heart surgery, right, on the operating table. And he said, so my grandpa um, goes into hospital and he wakes up in heaven. The question is, if heaven is a table that has every tongue, tribe, and nation, and has everybody, all these other bits and pieces, what would my grandpa have thought when he woke up in heaven? Is heaven a place that is going to, which then fits with some of the other stuff that Brad Jerzak and Shane quoted some Brad stuff the other day. And oh, another link there. Um, when we get to heaven, are we going to like what we find? Because do we cultivate what we needed to cultivate inside our identity here and move towards what we need to move towards?
And
Like,
what's our relationship with, like you said, the only thing we want to hone in control on is controlling ourselves. And
yeah,
there is this thing of like, do I understand controlling
yeah,
myself? Are
yeah,
my decisions my own? Am I
mm,
paying attention? Do I have, in my sense of self, is this, am I living my life or am I confined to the restrictions over me? And so there's this really important thing. It's like to me, it's a matter of will. Like, do I
mm.
understand my will and my ability to choose? Because, and this, we could go all sorts of weird places when I say
Yeah.
what I'm about to say, but
No, cool, cool.
Paul Young says if we have free will here in life,
Mm,
then we have to have free will on the other side
mm.
and after this, what we call death, which, it's very orthodox to realize death is our final birth. There's what's coming after.
Mortality, yeah,
And we
yeah.
have great fiction about the other side, but nobody's sending postcards back. So,
No, no, no.
but it's fascinating. And just the accountability to the importance of good choice and
Mm,
how the more we make good choices, the easier it is when we miss the mark, which is love, that I have this whole wealth of good living so I can get back into my window of tolerance more readily than if I don't know how to live the good stuff.
mm. Mm,
like when you said your previous life where you'd go off and you do the good things, but
mm.
the goodness inside, the your internal working model hadn't had the goodness integrated in the way that you have now.
Yeah. And I think too, coming back into that kind of window, like I think I'm really, really gung ho on like the whole control thing. I'm gonna ask you a question actually, because I'm processing some of the other stuff that we've got over here. But um I can't remember who it was. I don't know whether it was like a Zig Ziglar or Stephen Covey or someone, but they say that you become the sum total of the 5 to 7 people that you hang around the most. They kind of influence your personality and whatever. There's another guy over here that I follow a little bit of. You become the 5 or the 7 people that you hang around the most. So don't choose dickheads, right? Which
That's good advice.
right, um, and so our journey is our own journey. Our journey, we have to do the journey um, on our own, but we don't
Yeah.
we don't do it by ourselves. Like the control, we have control of it. We make our choices. The choices are ours to make. We have to journey. I'm responsible for my salvation in the sense of the choices I make, right? But I don't do it on my own. And in fact, I can't do it on my own, and I'm not supposed to do it on my own. I do
Mm-hmm.
it inside the community of other people so that when the choices I do make, they go, you really want to do that? That's probably not the best way to go. And so you have that community of people who
Yeah.
help don't take your free will away from you, but who know you as a person. You've got relationship with them, and so the journey to salvation is yours and your choice alone, but it's not done on your own or by yourself.
And it's
And
kind of
I'm
like
really
David, like what David did for you. He did not impose on you. He did not
no,
tell you his
no,
opinion or any. He just allowed himself to feel for you. He had emotion for you.
mm,
Um and and that was his use of his own choice. And it was the volume of movement of that
yeah,
story compared to people who are going to ascribe the right words to pray, or people who are going to
mm,
tell you how to do this or what you will do.
mm,
But David's tears penetrated your inner experience in a way that was just so much more healing and authentic than somebody telling you the right way to behave.
oh, and I think secondarily to that, and possibly even more importantly, was that this is where my question will come out of, but he let me sit in the pain I needed to sit into to feel it. He didn't try and rescue me from it. And I've been again, we've got an incredibly um left wingy kind of, I don't even know if that's right, but the whole woke thing. And I am beginning to discover in my own world, like actually, when I'm triggered, that's a good thing. Like when I'm triggered, I actually need to be triggered because that then highlights, oh, that's not right. What part of my identity is that I need? I don't need safe spaces. What I need is safe people because by default, safe people create safe spaces. And then I've got somewhere to process why I'm triggered. And I'm not saying, like we need safe spaces for people to feel included. I get it. Just don't go around being a complete dick all the time. Don't go out of your way to be nasty. But this whole concept of avoiding being triggered from where I sit and what I see and my own journey, I feel like that's backwards because actually, if you keep avoiding being triggered, you're actually avoiding the very things that are going to be instrumental in your growth and the wholeness of your journey moving forward.
See, it's
Like,
interesting because I was reading, I have it somewhere, but T.S. Eliot, the poet, has a collection of essays on Christianity and culture. And
yeah,
one of the things he says is that if we are, so I'm going to say it in the language that I say, but if we're living in
sure.
our spiritual self, if we're living
Mm,
within love's kind,
yeah.
then we should always feel at tension, because
Mm,
if we are really living within what love's kind, then the systems around us and the misuse of power,
Yeah.
And the lack of understanding the person who is different than me is always going to be an affront. So we
Mm,
see somebody who's different, or somebody who is being uh, even somebody who's being evil, somebody
mm,
who is killing children.
mm,
And I go with my safe cohort, my 5 to 7, and we sit there and wonder, what is nonviolent protest, or what is love? How do we move within love's kind? Paul Young, what's the next right thing to do with this
oh
terrible
my
person?
goodness. I
Right.
I think now is probably a great time. That's a segue into my wife. We were talking about some stuff, and this is again, this is when you really understand and you know that someone understands forgiveness, but you also they just whatever they say, it just brings a new revelation of light, love, and whatever it is to you. So my wife found the guy on Facebook who raped her.
Oh, wow.
Right, right. This is I don't care about the rest of my life. This moment in my life was such a privilege to be with her as she unpacked this. And so I'm like, every husband, I'm like, right, I have a background in some other things and did a bit of security. I'm going to track this guy down. I'm going to exact justice. Never mind that it's got nothing to do with justice and it's horrible. Like it's just horrific.
Yeah.
That's
Free
the other
kick.
thing.
Free kick.
Like George MacDonald, God's wrath. If we understood God's wrath, we would run to it because it's against what you like you'd purify. Like, oh my goodness. Anyway, so my wife stumbles across this. I'm like, well, she goes, honey, why would you want to do that? I'm like, what? She goes, why would you want to do that? Because all you're going to have to do, we're going to see him in heaven. I'm like, what? And I understand, like, we've done all this work. Like, if everybody's included, which is what we do believe, everybody's included, and what you don't work out here, you have to work up there. Why would you go and add to the list of things that
Yeah.
you have to do, that you have to sort out next time? I'm looking at her and we just embraced. And then that started a dialogue, which is what it alludes to what you talked about. And so when people talk about suffering, and this is I have tattooed on my shoulder, my favorite Bible verses are Philippians 2, 1 to 14, where God became flesh. Like he chose the incarnation, he chose to come down in the middle of our mess to help us work our mess out. Like it's just remarkable.
Yeah.
And so where people go, well, where was God when you were being raped? And it's like he was right next door to me, weeping as it was happening.
Yeah.
He was weeping that this was going to so influence, shape, and do stuff in my life. And the justice. Where was he? What was happening for the rapist? Well, God was next to him weeping because he is so broken and so messed up and so out of his identity that he needs to behave like this in order
Yeah.
to feel the same God in the same moment is displaying the same love for people at opposite ends of the spectrum.
Sure.
And so, and I'm not trying to minimize anything and like it, but at that moment we both looked at each other and we knew that God was doing something spectacular in both of us and the healing and like when someone
Yeah.
talks like that, that forgiveness, they understand it a whole lot better than you do.
That's,
You know.
and I mean, that's a spiritual language to explain your wife having done the work. Like she's
Oh
been
yeah.
in her trenches, and the
Oh yeah.
immense amount of grace she has, the
Yeah. Yeah.
self-compassion and the compassion for the other, and the
Mm,
wisdom too, to know, like, I don't get repair with him on this side. It's not wise
no,
for us to have a
no,
conversation with him.
no,
That's a
no.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I feel happy for her. I feel
Oh,
happy for
look,
her.
I feel so privileged. I
Yeah.
and she does grief like it's like I've just learnt so much from her. Like when you see people do things the right way, you
Yeah.
go, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like, and so when I came out of my background, and I never grieved anything, you just move on, just move on. My dad passed away from cancer 2 weeks before I got married, first time, bang, go, bury him, back into life, away you go, whole heap of stuff. And one of the things that was really disappointing, but really necessary and really around my divorce, when your relationships break down, the
Mhm.
very thing that you need to do is be around healthy people because you don't want to make the same mistakes moving forward. But that then reminds you of everything that you don't have, and it's a bit dual edged. So you have to walk back into it in order to learn from it. And for her, watching her do grief has been such a healing part of my journey because I'm like, no, why would you do that? That's ridiculous. Why would you go there? Like, and then watching her be really healthy and not have it have the strangulating grip that I unconsciously am unaware of in my own
And
life.
and I think like healthy is like that when you're talking about Gabar Mate and there's no normal.
No,
Healthy-ish is what I'll say with clients. I'm like, the goal is healthy-ish, but we
yeah,
are flawed and fabulous. This thing of
yeah,
like um a, a great companion is a person who like you, Billy, who's like, I know my nature, and I'm working really hard to heal as much of the stuff inside and to know myself as much and to keep moving forward. And this is a misconception, I think, with like Christian culture in particular, is that image of what it looks like to be healthy or Christian or faithful or some sort of language, righteous, these
mm,
gross
mm,
words that get misused.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
healthy was David, again, David Tenson, who was just
That's right.
like, he
You
just
know,
sat with you and cried.
there's a fantastic, and I have a very, very dark sense of humor, which you're probably not surprised about, but um, there's a comedian I love called Bill Burr, and he does about a 5 minute clip on. Um, they have a child, and he has to get rid of his rescue dog because he doesn't want to be that parent that who sat the dog down and the dog bit the baby kind of thing. And then he goes through this whole 5 minute skit about the proper. He was angry at his wife for having the proper response, and he's like, just be like every other man. Like bury that anger just below the chest where every other man buries it. And at the end of it, he raises the question about, I couldn't help but wonder in that moment which one of my family members would bear the brunt of the misdirection as that seeped out later on.
Yeah.
And not dealing with grief and not dealing with that stuff. That's exactly where it goes and what happens. And so, Sim and Gary and Deb, they've been great people for me, but it's safe people create by default safe spaces. And so being able to walk back into those areas, I think, which is kind of feel like we come full circle, but
Mm-hmm.
um, that's laid the platform because I was terrified going into EMDR that having had so many other spiritual experiences and prayer experiences because I was so detached, like it's I laugh, I shouldn't laugh, but but so detached that I just couldn't connect with too many other things. And we'd go and we'd go to the conferences and I'd watch people have experiences. I'd try and get next to them in the hope that it would rub off. And I was worried that Ian's right, get some of that stuff rubbing off on me.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to touch
yeah.
like that, right? Right? Must be something wrong with me. Um, I'm like, oh yeah, well EMDR works for everybody else, but it won't work for me. And then to have it work the way it did and do the stuff that it did and have those experiences, I think everything goes together. The safe people create safe spaces that allow the next right thing to happen. And
Yes.
it's that, the next right thing. And I love one of the things that's been really beautiful is as I've journeyed this, and um, again, God is just so faithful. The advantage rule, you'll flick on and the right podcast will come up, or you'll hear a message from somebody who makes mention of somebody else that you've listened to. So the resource packages that you get then open up even further. And I just feel incredibly, incredibly privileged to, like last time we spoke, I was on my way to Beechworth to visit a mate in
Yes.
prison. I was that nasty kind of in-out reception-y thing, right, which we went to yesterday. But my mate in the car, my best mate was up with me. He's a lawyer. And feedback for you, he said, "Oh, she seems really lovely." I go, "Yeah, she is, It's really,
Oh, I
it
like
was
him
just
already.
right, 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 right." And he's a lawyer. Like he's a lawyer.
Amazing.
He's such a good guy. Um, and I feel like whatever. The other analogy I love is that Paul Young talks about, 3 and 4 dimensional chess. Like I can't play chess in 1 dimension, and God plays it in 4 and has it work. And so this person connects with this person, and if you are pursuing, you're on that journey, you're in the state of perfection because you're in the process. Then the people that you meet along the way, God is so for you that He is going to use whatever happens to your benefit,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, it's just I think those things.
I think it's even like you and I being friends, right? Where it's just these like it's a simple little example of
Yeah.
my friendship with David. David,
Mm,
wanting to bless the community and saying, "Hey, Tara, come and hang out with some of my friends on Zoom."
mm,
And
mm.
then you and I clicking. But I think that we all can wrestle with imposter syndrome. And
Oh,
so there's this like, I don't
oh,
belong. And your camera like that
wow.
one. Your camera is very interested. And I don't belong. So then I don't think that I could be friends with Billy, or Billy doesn't think he could be
Mm,
friends with me. But when
mm,
we know, it's like, I'm just living today as good as it gets. And
mm, mm.
tomorrow's the next day where I live as good as it gets. I'm in this present
Yeah.
moment. But Billy's my friend, that I'll just discover what that means, to the point that discovering the really good people. So I have way more than 5 to 7 people now, and I think you do too. There's
Yeah.
so many good
Oh yeah.
people,
Oh yeah.
but my benchmark is I get to like myself in all of my relationships,
Yeah.
and I
Look,
don't have to fix other people. I don't, as a
no,
psychologist, I don't fix people.
no.
Yeah.
And you're right. I lived the first. I'm 57, so I lived the first, you know, 54 years of my life thinking, when these people find out that I'm a dick, they're just going to drop me like, I'm going, like that imposter syndrome. I don't have an academic education, but I'm writing curriculum for high school students. Like it's just
Yeah.
because the lens of shame that you live with, you can't get past. And so if I'm truly honest, like you say, you know, the art when shame is removed, I can see who I really am, and I begin to, and then God has put these other people around me who are, they don't know each other, but they're saying the same things about me. Well, now I have a choice. Do I want to believe what God's doing in my life and
Yeah.
how He is trying to teach me to love myself, and and then without that lens of shame, um, I'm like, wow. And then I love out of overflow, not out of deficit
Yeah.
and need to be liked.
And
And
we're not saving anybody, like, which is a God
no,
complex, that I will do
yeah,
something that will get you
yeah,
somewhere. Whereas
mm,
the more I believe that missing the mark is missing love, the more I live within
mm,
love's kind, I'm a mirror. The better the
mm,
mirror is, so that I can
yeah,
sit beside my friend Billy and just reflect the love that
mm,
I live in, and Billy can see love on me, and Billy can
mm,
see Billy. There's
mm,
these differences
yeah,
that start to happen in our relationships,
yeah,
like David crying for you.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm going to attribute this to Bill Johnson. If it's not him, I'm sorry, but it's a great quote. And whoever it is, if I miss it, I'm sorry. But I've heard it say that we only change, we only change for one of two reasons. We change because of desperation or inspiration.
Mm.
And it's far better to change because we're inspired. Like that mirror thing, I go, wow, Tara, I want to be like that. I like that quality because there's an authenticity to it.
Yeah.
There's an infectious and because it's from overflow, it's easy to give away. You don't become protective of that's mine. I've got to hang on to this and I've got to, there's enough of the love pie and the Jesus pie to go around. It just keeps giving. You don't and like Paul, you can just keep giving stuff away because it just keeps getting replenished rather than living like an orphan who has to hang on to things so tightly that, and desperation, whilst it can cause people to make the choices they need to make, normally they're not for the right motives. It's
You
like,
see, and this is where when we're surrounded by people who choose love and choose love and choose love as often as
mm,
possible, because sometimes
mm,
we're broken people. I don't do it perfectly,
mm,
but then it's amazing what's corrective as well, as it's like all of a sudden you're around these people that actually are loving and loving and loving, and it's
mm,
not like, oh, here's the small print, Billy, here's
mm,
here's here's that, but you did not do this thing, or but we actually realize that you have a history, so there's this there's this better truth of love. And I think if you brought up Mel before, and that's
mm.
Melinda from Face to Face Ministry, or Face to Face
Yeah,
International.
yeah,
So, and she's
yeah.
here. I had two friends at a conference I wasn't at, and I'm like, Melinda, look for the Australian guys. One's got a big beard. And then she found you, and you guys just like went
It's a
out for
hard head to
lunch.
miss. It's a hard head to miss. My year eight students, my year eight students think I have some Samoan boys who are just the most wonderfully natured
Oh,
people. And uh, Julius, he goes, sir, yeah, Jules, he goes, sir, I think you look like what Santa would look like if Santa had done time, hey? And uh, and they're just lovely kids, like they're just. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And Mel, when I met Mel, she's like, oh yeah, Tara said, he's a bikey looking dude, and
yeah.
and the minute you walked in, I knew that's who she was talking about. So it's those things. Again, those things are actually moments of intimacy.
Yes.
Those things create. That's why relationship is so important. She's got a relationship with you. I now have a
Yeah.
relationship with you. We trust that. And that's one of the differences, which I think you were talking about a minute ago. But when you have that stuff, safe people understand there is no small print,
Yeah.
and they understand the difference between covenantal and contractual. You know,
Yes.
they understand covenantal, and they just go, and you might have had a day where you are being a bit of a dick, and they go, yeah, bad day, come on, let's go for a beer. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. Take
like
them on a bad day, take your friend for a beer. That's great
that's it,
advice.
right? That's about as Australian as it gets. And I think, when people know, and this is probably, I don't know if I'm paraphrasing Paul Young or whatever, but when people know that there is the worst there is to know about you and they still love you, like, what else is there? And one of the reasons I love being, I remember when Gary started talking about it, we do the academy stuff. He goes,
Mhm.
when you're exposed, like that's the best way to live. I'm like, what? It'd be stupid because we have in the media exposed. And it's always coupled with shame and control. But actually, when you have no secrets and you're living a life that is open and exposed, what is there? And you don't have shame, you can't be controlled.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
and then you get no go.
but that's the mirror, right? So when you,
Yeah, yeah,
and I know Deb better than Gary, because
yeah.
I did a call with her, but
Mm,
I trusted the mirror that I sensed with Gary and that I saw,
mm,
and the contact that you and I had, and I trusted
mm,
the mirror that I experienced with Melinda. And I'm like,
yeah.
you know what? I think these guys are just going to have a great time, because I would have a great
Mm,
time with both of them. And then the
mm,
unspoken trust within myself is, if something goes awry, I feel that I can love enough on either one of my friends to help them way through if there would
mm.
have been some sort of silliness or some sort of disagreement, which it just wouldn't have happened. But it's like,
No.
that Paul's advice, just doing the next right thing, choosing love, moving within love's kind,
Mm.
having like Bradley Jerzak, when I heard him teach years and years, like over 20 years ago now was the first time I heard him. And he's
Yeah.
like, you think that you're getting a word from God, you test it against a community of saints. So you think you know what to do. You
Mm.
find the people who are trying to hit the mark, which is love, and you can run
Mm.
it past those people.
Yeah. We need those people. That's the
Totally.
concept of
Totally.
your journey is your own, but not by yourself.
Your journey is
You,
your own, but not by yourself.
like, and that is mine. But like it's just again, I go back to I'm a simple kid from Blacktown. That's just how it works. Like I'm responsible for it. It's my journey, but I don't. I'm actually not allowed to do it on my own. Like if I really take what Jesus did
Yes.
seriously, I'm not supposed to be doing it on my own. I'm supposed to be doing that stuff. I love, and it's really for me. I love one of the first things I got to see about Brad Jerzak, because the minute people start mentioning names, you kind of research stuff. The gospel in chairs, which is brilliant, right?
Yeah.
And then you marry that up against um, the story, and I love this story of Hosea and Gomer. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like Gomer is so screwed up. Like he goes and buys her, come back, marry. God says, do this, do that. But it's a perfect metaphor for us in the sense that we keep going off, we do dumb things. God comes, buys us back, chases us, gets us back again. Then we go do the wrong thing or whatever right or wrong is. But we keep making a choice that leads to not living in the light and missing the mark. And we keep doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
he continually pursues us and buys us back, even if the choices that we've made are so stupid and the mess that we created is completely of our own making.
Definitely.
He continually goes and buys us back until we finally get the point. Oh, you really do love me. Oh, this is what love really looks like. I will do whatever it takes to make you feel safe enough so that you can be who you are inside the context of a relationship with me, and I'm going to pursue you without fail and without end. I'm like,
And believing that, just believing this, like for people who might listen to this and be like, well, I don't believe in God, why am I listening to these two
sure,
yahoos?
yeah, yeah,
Regardless
yeah,
of, it's just like, this is good psychology, that
yeah, yeah,
regardless of how badly I miss the mark, there is no despair that I have to fall into that would cause me to give up on myself, to say I
yeah.
don't deserve relationship with anybody, that I am thrown into the garbage bin. There's
Mm,
nothing.
mm, mm,
And that is
mm.
so good for our mental health, because on the days we do the terrible thing,
Yeah,
or the terrible thing happens to us, that's when we need that real self compassion, self love, self
yeah.
or compassion for others, love for others, like the story of your
Mm,
wife and the compassion for her assailant.
mm.
Okay, so there's so many things here, and I'm aware of time. So,
That's
sort of
okay.
winding
Can
things
I go
down.
back one question? Can I go back to
Did you
one thing
ask
though?
your question that you were
Or,
going to ask?
or maybe so in terms of the non-God stuff. Like I get that. Like, and I love the
Yeah,
fact that truth doesn't need your approval to be a participant. Whether we believe in God or not doesn't matter. But the whole concept of love, and this is Brene Brown. This was brilliant. She was addressing 1,500 people in in like a big think tank thing at Washington or whatever it was. All the big top mental health care professionals in the US. And she said, why we all love the tactile kind of scientific, reproduce this result, that result, we do this. How many of us are talking about emotions and love when, those are the things like how many people here in this room talk to your clients about things that are not measurable? And three hands went up in the room.
I know.
And she said, all right, I want everybody here to think about a time where they felt like they were loved. And no worries. As everybody, I want everybody who can think of a time, put your hand up in the air. Every hand in the room went up. So she goes, all right. Now, how many of you people would be happy to live the rest of your life and never, ever, ever, ever have another experience like that?
Mm.
Not one hand went up in the room. And she said, well, if everybody knows what it is and everybody loves it and wants it, and nobody wants to live the rest of their life without it, why are there only three people in this room talking to their clients about it?
Yes.
And for me, that's the God thing. Okay, you don't have to believe in God. That's okay. Like that's my bent. Doesn't have to be yours.
Yeah.
Let's just focus it on the whole love thing. What love is. You know how it's meant to work. Do you want to live without it? No, absolutely not. So God doesn't need to be a part of the equation. He doesn't need credit for it. He's bigger than that. But that for me is if you don't have to take God on the journey, He's going to be there anyway.
I 100% agree, because that's it. Like, we can just,
Yeah,
if we, like, my book is like, let's just
yeah,
believe in love,
yeah, yeah,
and believe in love science, and do it, be a decent human being living
yeah.
within good relationship standards, and see what
Mm,
happens, see how the healing inside, like your wife and
mm,
your beautiful healing, and it's like you just let
mm.
all the love stuff work on you on the inside, and then she is like, as you know, she's a saint in
Yeah.
her
Oh, yeah.
understanding
Yeah.
of the person who caused
Mm,
her such damage. Okay,
mm,
all these
mm.
good things. Did you ask your questions?
Yes, I did. Well, yeah, kind of
Okay.
made. I think probably more along the lines of made an illustration rather than asked a question. But
You're
anyway,
like a
sorry.
therapist. You're just like me. We don't really ask questions. We just sort of put something out there and see what
Yeah.
happens. So yeah, be after your teaching gigs are through, then you can go, do more counseling gigs.
Well, maybe. You know,
Maybe.
I I counsel over a beer normally. That's kind of I
That's not a
love
bad
the
idea.
yeah. Look,
Yeah.
Paul Hogan in Crocodile Dundee. They were talking about. And he goes, "Haven't you got any mates?" That's kind of about as Australian as it gets. Haven't you got any mates? Like good mates are the ones that
Yeah.
they're therapists. They're great therapists. Mm.
So thank you so much, Billy. And I
You're
know
welcome.
you have things that you have vision for in the next year or
Mm.
two. And so we're gonna press record again
Yep.
down the road.
Yep.
I'm looking
Sure.
forward to it. And I just thank you
Yeah.
so much. I think that this conversation about explicitly about mental health
Mm.
and shame, and this sort of being philosophical and thoughtful about like where spiritual healing and psychological healing work
Mm.
and where they complement. And so it's a very important piece, and I'm so thankful. So anything you'd like to say before we wind things down?
No, look, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I think, and the other thing is, I think that the psychology and the stuff that you're doing. One of the things that I'm loving about learning the stuff I'm learning is how the spiritual and the psychological and how we're created at a cellular level. Like
Yeah.
the book that we love, has been saying this stuff for we're the ones who are late to the party.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, if we'd been living like this for the last 2,000 years, we might not be in the mess we're in, without it being prescriptive.
Yeah.
Like I just love the fact that, and it is disappointing that the organized religion stuff, doesn't embrace the really magnificent understanding. If you've got to go to a psychologist, something wrong with you. Whoa, 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 whoa. This stuff is where we started. When you understand this, it's the systematic backstory. It's the technical understanding that then makes the story come alive. It's
Yeah.
what gives you the tools that you need.
Yeah.
You know.
It's
I just,
interesting because it's like Daniel Amen is an amazing psychiatrist in the United States, and he does SPECT scans of the brain, and he says the number one most common fear somebody has coming in to get their brain looked at is what if nothing's wrong? And the good news is, and I think this is what you're saying, and I believe is like the good news is there's something wrong with you. Like everybody
yeah,
out there, there's something wrong with me,
yeah,
there's something wrong with you.
yeah.
And there's this huge immense freedom in just being like, oh, the abnormal is the normal.
Mm, 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 mm. I remember reading. I was never a big reader, but I can't remember if it was Plato or Socrates. He said, the greatest strength a man has is knowing where his weaknesses lie.
Mm.
And I remember going, oh, and that was one of the few academic things that landed and stuck. Um, and thinking, yeah. And I remember um, one of the things that happened in my previous marriage was I always thought I was broken because always been told I was broken.
Yeah,
And and I think if there's anything I am actually really, really thankful for, it's that while it did come with its baggage, like I've moved in lots and lots and lots of different religious circles and Christian things, and people go, oh, you do this, you do this, great. What's your secret? I go, I know I'm a mess. Like I just know I'm a mess. Like I don't expect anything else. It's not, and that's not a victim kind of statement thing. It's like I just know that I'm broken, and my greatest
totally,
strength is I know that I'm broken, and some days I'm going to be less broken than others. And
totally.
I remember saying to a number of people, unfortunately, a lot of people inside the established organisations think they're not broken. They think they're
Yeah,
right. I've got God and I'm fine, and actually that's really, really unhealthy.
it is. I'm not broken, or I can't show you that I'm broken.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I can't be my authentic me because the culture that I've been raised in says no, 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 no. Like even with like when our daughter passed, my stepdaughter, my wife's daughter, she had a heart transplant that she didn't recover from, and we're part of a group. I lost my brother to cancer. Um, Even in death, inside certain circles. So we've ran a group where there's 10 families. 7 of those families lost their children to suicide. Now, even that has, so we'll tell our story and people go, oh, that's tragic. Oh, your daughter. There's this cultural underlying thing that says to die that way is okay, to die that way is not okay. It's like, are
Yeah,
you insane? Like, and so you have these families who, the minute they mention that their child lost their life, and I love what Paul says, Paul Young says they chose to give their life back to God. And I've used that, and people look at me and they
yeah,
break down and cry, going, that's so nice. That's so nice. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Next time I see you.
yeah,
Um, you know, there religious structures are great at not having rules, but having rules. They're
yeah,
not explicit, but if okay, oh, you're that's tragic. There was an operation that went wrong. Oh, they took their own life. Well, what's wrong with them? What kind of household do you have? Are they? Oh, they were on drugs, or no, dude, just they were broken. They were just broken, and people
yeah.
missed it.
They're just a
People missed it.
person. They're a
Yeah,
person that didn't know they were included, and that's a tragic
yeah,
way to pass, not realizing
yeah,
just how included
yeah,
that how included we are.
yeah.
Okay, and this is a beautiful place to wind our conversation down.
Awesome.
And thank you so much, Billy. And I look forward to just continuing our friendship. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
coming to Australia one day. You're gonna come up to Canada. We're gonna just start, you know,
Dude,
all the
dude, are
international
you
partying.
cool? Are you? Well, I have a friend I met. Well, he's in Edmonton. Are you?
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Is that
close to
close to you?
Edmonton. Yes.
Oh, cool, 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 cool. All right, cool, cool.
If he's one
Yeah,
of these misfit weird Christians, you'll have to link him up with
sure,
me because we have some
sure,
stuff coming
sure.
up in Edmonton in January.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. I'll touch base with him. Cool.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Billy.
Hey, thank you so much for taking the time and making the time, mate. I really appreciate it. It's lovely. Lovely.
Yeah, you're welcome.